Hi there, welcome back to Kidsart. How to draw the torso. It might be easier than you think. I'm gonna share with you some critical tips and tricks, so make sure to stay until the end to fully take advantage of this video. When drawing the torso, it's easy to get distracted with anatomy, so this exercise is a great way to practice how one has to think when drawing. To put it simple, this is not a finished drawing or how you should draw. It's an exercise that will help you understand how you should think when drawing the figure. It's a great practice to see and draw the three-dimensional form, in other words, structure. Let's start with the basics. There are three key portions, as you can see here. They are the torso, the belly and pelvis. However, since the torso ribs truly terminates on the top half of the belly, we divide the torso-belly section in two, and the sternum tip might be seen at the end of the segment number 1. It's important to always draw the middle of the figure and the basic form that the pelvis cuts. Since now we are dealing with planes, having a middle line for each plane will help us a lot with construction. For the time being, let's simply focus on the torso and pelvis, as these are the solid shapes that will help us understand structure. Since the belly is squishy, we can always add it once the structure is correct. These are the actual practical forms, but even this abbreviated version is still more complex than is necessary, so let's simplify it. The best way to simplify it is by drawing a box. This box design is the most simple and is precisely the shape we need for this exercise, because this shape is the best form to describe three-dimensional space, since it has planes for the front, back, side, and top and bottom. These plane changes help us understand the orientation of the form. The top box represents the ribcage and a portion of the shoulders. The bottom box is the pelvis combined with the glutes. So we draw these landmarks accordingly. Another thing we are incorporating while practicing this is the general proportions of the torso in three-dimensional space. Speaking of proportions, the pelvis on males ends at the same width than the torso, while on females the pelvis are usually wider than the torso. But these proportions vary from person to person within genders. While drawing from reference or imagination, make sure to fully visualize from where we are seeing the figure before drawing. This will train your mind to understand three-dimensional space much faster. Each plane of the boxes has a function. While describing what the pose is doing as a general rule, the front and back planes help us understand which direction the figure is facing, while the top and bottom planes describe if the pose is leaning forward or backward. And the relationship between the edges of the main two boxes help us describe if there is a tilting one side or another. If the front plane of the box is looking in the opposite direction than the other, then we have a twist, which I will fully explain in just a bit. In this first example, we have both planes looking at the same direction. That means there is no twist. We can also see that the inclination of the edges is minimal, but it's not a straight pose because of the top and bottom planes, since we can see opposite sides, this being the bottom plane of the ribcage and the top plane of the pelvis. This translates as the figure leaning backward, and we draw that with the help of the side plane as well. Now, let's make a little twist. In this next post, we have the front planes looking in different directions. That means that we will have a twist. While drawing the twist, it's important to visualize which side we are seeing completely without interruption. In this case, it's the front plane. That will mean that the side planes will wrap back around the front plane, showing opposite directions on the side plane. Like this. If the plane we are seeing completely is the side plane, that will mean that the front and back planes will be overlapping back around the side plane. The front planes in this drawing are virtually confronting each other, as they face opposite directions, up and down. When the torso is leaning forward, it will be seen like this. The fact that the bottom box displays the bottom plane and the top box displays the top plane is another crucial element. We can also identify that we are discussing severe leaning since we can see the top and bottom directions opposing one another. In this example, we look at the corners and how they tilt side to side. Tilting happens because the top box has a completely different angle than the bottom box. Because the two boxes shows the same top plane, we may deduce that the only severe movement will be in the torso, as opposite to the hips, which are more static for this stance. After a period of time of practicing different positions, we may begin to build a more organic contour for the center mass, including the belly button. When dealing with this mass, we treat it as a semi-soft, squishy shape that changes depending on which relationship the ribs and pelvis have. We may also add further landmarks, such as the end of the abdominals on the pelvis and the pectoral muscles, with the figure midsection also being the middle of the chest. Because the torso has essentially little tilting, leaning or twisting, the central mass is almost the same on both sides in this scenario. On the other hand, in this case, since we can see tilting to one side, the squishy form in the middle will have a pinch on one side and be stretched from the other. It's crucial when drawing the form in general to analyze these aspects to see how the body masses will behave. The best exercise to practice this is to get some poses and draw the structural shape for that pose, like I'm showing here. If you need some cool poses, in the description below you will find a link with tons of poses and a code for a 15% discount. Another way you can study this are drawing the structure on the top of a photograph or a drawing, and also from imagination, once you practice this long enough. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment. As I always say, enjoy the process of drawing and you will get the best results. Same goes for life. Thanks for watching and happy drawing!